Good evening to our viewers here in Guyana and online. On behalf of the Nightly News team, I am Carice Gonzalez, wishing you a prosperous new year. Thanks for joining us for this special edition of the HGP Nightly News' Year in Review, where we will be bringing you topical issues covered by our news team during this year. We begin tonight's broadcast with His Excellency Mohammed Irfan Ali's 2024 New Year address to the nation.
My fellow Guyanese, Happy New Year. It is with immense joy and optimism that I extend warm greetings to all Guyanese, both at home and those in the diaspora, as we bid farewell to the old and welcome the new.
Meanwhile, leader of the opposition Aubrey Norton a day later said that the Ali-led administration has made 2023 a challenging year, and as such, the opposition will be turning up the heat in several areas, including implementing cost of living relief measures. Here is that report.
In his New Year's address, opposition leader Aubrey Norton provided a scathing critique of the Irfan Ali-led administration's management of the country over the last couple of years, but placed specific emphasis on the past 12 months. He argued that despite the country's wealth of resources, the current regime took minimal action to alleviate the soaring cost of living.
It is unfortunate that the word football, it is only benefiting the PPPC's elite, friends, and families.
Let's now turn our attention to Budget 2024. On January 15, Senior Minister with responsibility for Finance, Dr. Ashley Singh, presented the $1.146 trillion national budget, and surprisingly, a whopping $6 billion was allocated for the struggling Guyana Sugar Corporation. More details in the Shamar Allen's report.
Under the rubric Staying the Course, Building Prosperity for All, Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance, Dr. Ashley Singh presented Budget 2024 in the National Assembly on Monday. The Senior Minister kick-started his presentation with challenges the Irfan Ali-led administration faced in 2023, some of which he claimed was a rollover from the APNU-AFC coalition a lengthy 3 years after the coalition demitted office. A mammoth $97.6 billion has been set aside for agricultural development in Guyana. Of that sum, $6 billion would go to the Guyana Sugar Corporation, Gaisuku.
Mr. Speaker, it is expected that the conversion of lands for mechanized harvesting will continue in 2024, targeting an additional 7,100 hectares. Additional works will be completed on Albion and Blairman packaging plants. The installation of a sugar dryer.
Since assuming office in 2020, the People's Progressive Party CIFIC has been injecting billions of dollars into Gaisuku to sweeten sugar.
Continue work on several other pump stations like Airline Sluice, Bellevue, Canal Number 1, Charity, Cottage, Kosher, Jimbo Grove, Letterkenny, Metamazor. We will invest in pump stations at Chesney, Farm, Grove South. In 2024, we will continue to rehabilitate canals throughout the country, including at Big Baibu, Brickery, Bushy Park, Coverdale, amongst others.
Moreover, a whopping $80 billion has been allocated for the gas-to-energy project at Wales.
Mr. Speaker, this year, the gas-to-energy project will benefit from a budgetary allocation of $80 billion to advance this project and its associated infrastructure.
Vice President Barjagdeo had revealed that the deadline for this much-touted project might be affected due to the handing over of lands. In fact, $67.9 billion has already been injected into the gas-to-energy project, with a key loan still pending.
Following Dr. Singh's presentation of the 2024 national budget, while government ministers described the fiscal plan as visionary and a budget that caters to the poor and working class, opposition members of parliament dubbed the fiscal plan uninspiring and lopsided. Here is more.
On Monday, On the sidelines of the National Assembly, Shadow Foreign Affairs Minister Amanza Walton-Desir expressed her disapproval of the 2024 budget during an interview with this newscast.
I will say that it met my expectations of the PPP government, and that is absolutely nothing of substance for working class Guyanese. It is simply more of the same.
Let's now turn our attention to the almost 2-month-long nationwide teachers' strike that lasted for more than 2 months. Travis Chase tells us that on January 29, a nationwide teachers' strike loomed as the Guyana Teachers Union accused the People's Progressive Party civic government for failing to address several critical issues affecting its members. Here is more.
The Guyana Teachers Union has put Minister of Education Priya Manikchand, Labour Minister Joseph Hamilton, and the Chief Education Officer Saddam Hussein on notice that it intends to call a nationwide strike from February 5 to 16, 2024. In a letter dispatched to the Minister of Labour and the Chief Education Officer, General Secretary of the Guyana Teachers Union, Coretta MacDonald, highlighted government's failure to address several critical issues. The union's multi-year agreement, salary increases and non-salary benefits without mutual agreements, failure of the chief labor officer to act on grievances outlined by the union, and unresolved matters impacting educational stability are reasons for the looming nationwide strike. On Monday morning, Minister of Labour Joseph Hamilton, instead of speaking directly to the issues outlined by the GTU, said that any industrial action by teachers would be deemed unlawful.
Any strike that is called by the Guyana Teachers Union will be deemed illegal and illegitimate by the Ministry of Labour.
The Guyana Teachers Union made it clear that the union remains committed to resolving outstanding matters amicably, but is disappointed by government agencies with knowledge of the daily plight teachers face.
What should have been a 2-week strike after teachers took to the streets, the government then deemed their actions illegal, with Minister of Education Priya Manikchand accusing the nation's educators of being unreasonable.
We continued to pay teachers during that period. I am posing a question to you. Do you think it is reasonable?
That was Education Minister Priya Manikchand on Wednesday speaking to reporters on the sidelines of a book launch hosted by the Ministry of Education. This comment came after a question was posed to her about the talks of the Guyana Teachers Union requesting a salary increase from 2019 to 2023. The minister claimed that during the pandemic, the ministry abstained from making deductions from teachers' salaries, and the GTU is being unreasonable in asking for significant increases in the years the virus was rampant.
Because I thought everybody was getting a little insane, and this was being led by leaders of the union, which was very disappointing. And the only victims of this would be our children.
Manikchand also said that although an agreement was made to discuss the proposal, it does not mean that the said proposal would be accepted.
An agreement to discuss is not an agreement about. A discussion was had.
The minister claimed that the ministry and the union shared a cordial relationship, and since the PPPC government took office in 2020, it has treated the union as priority.
On February 6, government announced that with immediate effect, it will cease to perform the functions of an agent to the union and will cease deducting monthly dues from teachers' salaries and remitting same to the union. More in this Daisy Richards report.
Permanent Secretary and President of the Guyana's Teachers Union, GTU, Mark Light, dated February 6, 2024, said the ongoing strike action undertaken by the GTU is unlawful and an expression of bad faith, driven by interests other than the welfare and condition of teachers. The letter added that the union had already come to an agreement with the government on many of its demands, thus the ministry deemed the strike unlawful and will affect the welfare of students and teachers. The ministry also accused the union of politicizing the ongoing strike action, citing an opposition member of parliament as the apparent chief architect. The union was also accused of disseminating a barrage of threats. Again, Qatari said in light of the union's conduct, the government of Guyana can no longer provide its services as an agent. The government said with immediate effect it will no longer be deducting the union fees from the salaries of teachers and paying it over to the union. In justifying its action, the government cited a previous case of the Guyana Public Service Union versus Nanda Gopal, where Chief Justice Ian Chang delivered a judgment on the 24th of August 2010. The Chief Justice ruled that in respect of the deduction of union dues in particular, the government of Guyana was merely acting as the agent of the union for the purpose of withholding and remitting such dues to the union. The withdrawal of such agency service by the government of Guyana did not mean that such dues were not collectible. It merely meant that the Guyana Public Service Union was tasked with collecting such union dues itself. As such, unlike the case of agency fees, if the plaintiff union suffered any financial loss, it was on account of its own inaction. With the withdrawal of their responsibilities, the ministry recommended alternative arrangements to the GTU for collecting their dues.
In a marathon ruling Friday, High Court Judge Sandel Kisoon ruled that the more than 5-week strike by the nation's teachers was legal and justified, and that the government of Guyana cannot deduct or withhold salaries of teachers who participated in the strike. The court found also that the government of Guyana acted unlawfully and discriminatory when it stopped deducting the union dues from the salaries of teachers for the Guyana Teachers Union. Senior Counsel Roysdale Ford, who appeared on behalf of the Guyana Trades Union Congress, said that the ruling opens the basis for teachers to be paid a livable wage.
So we have today a case where the workers' rights in this country has been enshrined in law and has been vindicated by the decision of this court. This is a significant and landmark decision.
Justice Kisoon hammered the government over its failure to engage the Guyana Teachers Union over collective bargaining, saying that the government undermined and sidelined the Guyana Teachers Union. Senior Counsel Ford agreed with the judge.
The judge used words like criminal, unlawful, unconstitutional, arbitrary. And so what do you make of those?
The court tested what happened in these circumstances. The court tested the conduct of the Ministry of Education in its letter that it sent refusing to ensure that the deduction of wages continue.
The High Court in its ruling noted that, quote, teachers lifted their voices and they asked for bread, but they were given stones, unquote. Chief Education Officer Saddam Hussein was not spared. The judge found that he was not credible, fair, and frank with the court. In fact, the court found that the actions of Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Education, Shanil Hussein Uttar, to issue a notice of intent to deduct from the salaries of thousands of teachers who were on strike was criminal.
The court then proceeded to determine the question as to whether the evidence given by Mr. Saddam Hussein was acceptable and appropriate. The court found that the evidence adduced by him was intended to deceive the court, it was misleading, and not capable of providing the basis upon which the court can act as a whole on the issues which had to be determined.
Meanwhile, Attorney General Anil Nandlal said that the government plans to appeal the ruling.
To begin with, certainly and not unexpectedly, the government will appeal. In my view, the judge, in that very, very marathon judgment, has committed grave and substantial errors.
In summing up its ruling, the court found that government refused to negotiate increased salaries with the Guyana Teachers Union, despite the fact that several efforts had been made by the union to engage the government on the 2019 to 2023 proposed multi-year agreement. High Court Judge Sandel Kisoon Thursday afternoon ordered mediation between the Guyana Teachers Union and the Ministry of Education to begin at 9 a.m. on Friday, March 1, 2024. Justice Kisoon also appointed Senior Counsel Edward Lockwood and the Senior Counsel Robin Stobie to act as mediators to possibly resolve the ongoing dispute between the Government of Guyana and the GTU. Attorney General and the Minister of Legal Affairs, who appeared on behalf of the Ministry of Education, tried in vain to persuade the judge for the GTU and the Ministry of Education to resume talks as was previously agreed upon. The Attorney General, after the judge's ruling, said that he doesn't find the mediation process necessary.
I believe that the mediation process was not necessary having regard to the government's antecedents in this matter. As I indicated to the judge, our government took office in August of 2020. On the 11th day of August 2020, we began monthly statutory meetings with the union.
Justice Kissoon said that he's hopeful that during the mediation, issues affecting both parties can be addressed, which may result in teachers returning to the classrooms.
I don't know what can be achieved in a court mediation in this room tomorrow. And I was trying to explain to the judge, let the parties go, resume the meeting in their normal meeting place, and continue the discussions. There are certain issues, apparently, that the union would like to be expeditiously addressed. Those can be accelerated to the front of an agenda. That's not a problem. You don't need a mediator to do that.
President of the GTU, Mark Light, said that pay increase will be at the top of the GTU's agenda during mediation.
If I'm to put you on the spot here, would pay talks, collective bargaining, either of those be at the helm of your discussions tomorrow?
Yeah, that's it. That's the gist of the conversation that we'd want to have with the Ministry of Education and by extension the government. The hard issue as it relates to teachers' salary increases, and that has been our focus. The main reason why the teachers are out a strike, there's a strike called by the union, is simply because there have been no talks on the teachers' salary increase.
Meanwhile, attorney at law for the GTU, Darren Wade, told reporters outside the courtroom that it's already established that it was the government of Guyana who has been failing to meet with the union on collective bargaining.
The issues in relation to collective bargaining, the government has been refusing over the last 3+ years to meet with the government to deal with those hard issues. So to come out here and to say that the government made attempts to resolve this issue, it is false.
The mediators are expected to submit a progress report to Justice Kissoon Friday afternoon.
After a short spin back in the classroom and discussions between the union and the government was headed nowhere, teachers would again return to the streets in what turned out to be a more than 75-day strike. Nevertheless, on August 21, a multi-year deal was struck between the union and the Ministry of Education. However, some members of the union were unhappy and accused the president and second vice president of failing teachers.
Several executive members of the Guyana Teachers Union who are not in agreement with the apparent haste in which the president of the Guyana Teachers Union moved to sign on to a 3-year agreement with the Ministry of Education on Wednesday are meeting to decide on the way forward. GTU Executive and Region 10 Union Representative Vanessa Kissoon is among the disgruntled.
We, the teachers and the members of the Guyana Teachers Union, will have to know where we take this matter from here. This is utter disrespect.
The signed agreement between the Ministry of Education and the Guyana Teachers Union caters for a 10% salary increase for 2024 for Guyana's teachers, 8% increase for 2025, and a 9% increase for 2026. A number of non-salary allowances, scholarships, housing initiatives, a healthcare package, and other issues were also agreed upon. Ms. Kissoon believes that more discussions should have been done with teachers before the signing off of any agreement.
We had a negotiation meeting. The president recused himself from that meeting and the last negotiation meeting where the first vice acted as president. And so we were of the impression, in fact, in the group we were told the discussions continue today. So to come here, listen, I walked out of the meeting because I said to the team, and I wanted it to be on record, that as the General Counsel rep for the Upper Demerara branch and a member of the Guyana Teachers Union, I'm in no way in agreement with what happened there just now.
Ms. Kissoon called out President of the Guyana Teachers Union, Dr. Mark Light. She said she's disappointed in his recent actions.
And I want teachers to understand. We have expressed, well, teachers expressed, because I ran against Mark in the last elections, their confidence in Mr. Mark Light. And this is where it got us again. The first time, we had a meeting in Linden when we were striking. The president left Linden. And apparently, every time the president leaves us, he's always getting a phone call. Because the last time the strike was called off, we were told some, I don't know, Jim Cock bring Ramgoat story. Teachers are still upset. Some teachers, I can tell you, especially from up them, with that last decision.
President of the Guyana Teachers Union, Dr. Mark Light, is on record as saying that he had the support of the majority of the General Council of the GTU, who agreed to accept the terms of the agreement. The agreement was signed by the GTU President, Mark Light, and Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Education, Shanil Hussein Uttar.
After teachers benefited from incentives from the signed multi-year agreement in their October salaries on December 18, in a bombshell revelation, we reported that 2 high-ranking members of the union were suspended. Here is more from Travis Chase.
The second highest decision-making body of the Guyana Teachers Union has taken a decision to suspend its president, Dr. Mark Light, and the second vice president, Julian Cambridge. In an invited comment via telephone Wednesday, Dr. Light told Nightly News that the General Council's decision to suspend him and his second vice president is apparently over the signing of the salaries and benefits agreement with government earlier this year.
Myself and Mr. Cambridge, we were suspended indeed. Coming out of the General Council meeting yesterday, there was a motion to suspend us. To number 2, probably for signing the agreement that was approved by the General Council of August 8th.
Talked by the suspension because, according to him, the very General Council had approved the signing of the agreement. He believes that political mischief is afoot.
The same General Council that approved the signing of the agreement is now suspending us. And I think it's desperate times. Number 3, there is a lot of political gimmicks. The union has now become so politicized with all the political elements surfacing at this meeting.
The agreement stipulates that teachers will receive a salary increase of 10% for 2024, 8% for 2025, and 9% for 2026. When that agreement was struck, the union's president, Dr. Light, and vice president, Julian Cambridge, were accused of deceiving teachers. They were also accused of colluding with the PPP government and misleading the General Council.
I think it's solely political, and the teachers of Guyana continue to be hoodwinked, a conduit to our political party. So that is why it's sudden. Also, GTU's upcoming election, I think Mr. Cambridge will be the biggest challenge to all the other candidates, and therefore it's one of the ways to move him aside so that the other candidates can proceed.
Nightly News understands that 24 General Council members voted for Dr. Light to be suspended, while 8 voted against.
You are watching a special edition of Nightly News' Year in Review. I am Carice Gonzalez. In February, President Irfan Ali, at the opening of the highly anticipated Guyana Energy Conference and Supply Chain Expo, which was hosted at the Georgetown Marriott, highlighted his government's ambitious plans for the oil and gas sector.
The 2024 Guyana Energy Conference and Supply Chain Expo officially opened on Monday at the Marriott Hotel in Georgetown, where President Irfan Ali highlighted Guyana's ambitious plans for the oil and gas sector. Delivering the feature address, President Ali said Guyana aims to achieve a production level surpassing 1 million barrels of oil per day by the end of this decade.
Our local consumption now is 800 barrels per day. So we will be producing at least 4,000 barrels, and that is in phase 1, 40% of the pipeline. Our local consumption is 800 barrels. Immediately, we have 3,200 barrels available for export.
The much-touted gas-to-energy project is underway, which is expected to add some 300 megawatts of power to the current grid.
We do not have reliable, efficient energy. We do not have the quantum of energy to drive the industrialization and manufacturing that is critical.
Dr. Keith Rowley acknowledged the importance of transitioning away from oil and gas production amid climate emergency. However, Caribbean nations affirmed their commitment to leveraging their resources.
In order to ensure energy security for the region and combat the negative impacts of climate change, it is imperative that we effectively utilize our resources, whether they be hydrocarbon or renewable, through collaborative efforts.
Additionally, Rowley advocated for regional countries to capitalize on Trinidad's extensive experience in the oil and gas sector, practices within the region to optimize energy resources, which could then be utilized to stimulate growth across various sectors, such as agriculture and manufacturing.
Our small nation has been able to boost our economy by becoming a significant global player in the energy industry, boasting over 100 years of experience and expertise developed from the oil and gas industry, which has been valued by energy companies operating in Trinidad and Tobago and by developing oil and gas economies, which have sought to model their industries on our experience.
The ongoing construction of the multi-million US dollar seafront Qatari hotel continues to be a contentious issue. Back in February, we reported that bricks were laid for this massive hotel, even as the Georgetown Mayor and the City Council claimed ownership to the property in question.
The facility, which will be dubbed the Georgetown Seafront Resort and Convention Center, is made possible through the collaboration between the governments of Guyana and Qatar. President Irfan Ali, in his address, said the project is a testament to the strengthened relationship between Guyana and Qatar and signals the ushering of a new era of transformation.
We have seen tremendous interest, and Qatar is one of the countries that has shown remarkable speed in expanding this interest and transforming this interest into reality.
The president also added that very soon, through a nod initiative between the two governments, there will be the turning of the sod for a new stadium in Region 3, which will be financed by Qatar.
In our discussions with Qatar, there are a number of areas that we're focused on: tourism, hospitality, the services sector, oil and gas, food security for Guyana, the region, and Qatar, and investment.
Also speaking at the ceremony was Minister of Tourism Unij Walran, who predicted that initiative and investment from the Qatari group will be beneficial for the growth of the nation's tourism industry.
This capacity will immediately impact, in a positive way, the feasibility of our hosting larger regional conferences and events, which is part of our strategy for the industry.
Meanwhile, City Mayor Alfred Mentor told Nightly News that an investigation has been launched into ascertaining the rightful owners of the properties.
You can't just move ahead, go on ahead and build fence, and go on ahead and do these things and turn sod, and there is no application, there's no project proposal, there's nothing in the City Council to treat with this.
Mentor stressed that he has not seen any application by the Qatari group nor the government, and questioned if the rules do not apply to the central government and investors.
I mean, if we're going to be breaking the rules, or as a government, what standards are we setting? We ask normal citizens to apply to do a fence, to apply to do a parapet, to apply to do buildings, but yet again, these things are being violated.
Meanwhile, the mayor and city council had launched an investigation to ascertain the rightful owners of the land, but demanded a seat at the discussion table. The learned Attorney General had challenged the council to take the matter to court.
Announcements made during Monday's Mayor and City Council statutory meeting revealed plans for the council to request a roundtable discussion with President Irfan Ali concerning the ongoing construction of the Qatari hotel.
And now that the council has now given me they'll be seeking to have fiat of the council, I would like to propose that I write to His Excellency on this matter, seeking a discussion, clarity, or there's no success in the discussions with, hopeful discussions with His Excellency and maybe other government people on this matter. The council is prepared to take litigation in this matter.
Mayor of Georgetown Alfred Mentor reiterated the necessity for the production of project documents to be submitted to the council, emphasizing the importance of adhering to the rules and laws.
The project document has to start with the council. We must have one rule for everyone. There must be one rule for the citizens of the city. There must be one rule for the central government. And there must be one rule for investors who wants to invest in Guyana. We must not break the rules or bend it to suit anyone.
Furthermore, the council says it intends to dispatch a letter to the relevant authorities in the coming days to halt ongoing construction works on Thomas lands.
70 hours to write to the government, the investor, whoever it is, dealing with that matter, and to send a cease order like it's normally sent to any normal citizen.
However, concerns have been raised by the mayor and city council over the past few weeks regarding the proposed construction of the $300 million Qatari Hotel on Carifesta Avenue. The Qatari Hotel is expected to have 260 rooms and 150 apartments, along with conference rooms and other facilities. The hotel's proposed site is a national insurance scheme ground along Carifesta Avenue. Meanwhile, late last week, the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission (GLCS) did claims made by the mayor and city council about the ownership of the said properties, indicating that Lot 1 and 2 of Plantation Thomas were initially under Transport Number 30 of 1863 by the colony of British Guyana. These lands, categorized as colony lands, were held prior to independence and have since been termed government.
Has been locked in disagreement over the property. In mid-December, Mayor Mentor raised fresh concerns over government's leasing of the Carifesta Avenue land, saying the council is yet to receive the project proposal for review. Georgetown Mayor Alfred Mentor recently told Nightly News that was leased to Qatar Assets Group Inc. for the development of a seafront hotel. Mayor Mentor emphasized that while the new single-window process is in place, the proposal must be presented to the council for review.
The project still has to come through the city council for ratification, and we want
MNCC and the government are claiming ownership of the properties. The government has yet to engage with the MNCC. He noted that the council is closely monitoring developments related to the Carifesta Avenue lands.
Those are things that we'll iron out, obviously, at some kind of a roundtable discussion to determine how those resources will be repurposed so that the city will have a significant benefit.
Reiterating the council's position, Mentor stressed that the MNCC believes it should be part of the decision-making process. He called on the government to seek a resolution, emphasizing that the council is always open to finding a solution.
We must be able to find a common ground between the different sides, even the Qatari side, to be able to figure out how we deal with a number of issues. We have our markets, our Starbucks market, we have our Vendors Arcade Mall, we have our border market, Green, that we're looking to have significant investment. And for us to reduce our particular stance, we must have a quid pro quo arrangement to allow for monies to be allocated.
Opposition members of Carifesta Avenue lands. Patterson sought clarification on several aspects of the deal, including whether any bids had been submitted and which agencies were involved in the process. He raised concerns after discovering that the proposed development would impact the National Park and St. Stanislas ground. In response, Minister Singh clarified that only the Guyana National Service (GNS) and the National Insurance Scheme (NIS) sports ground were affected. However, Patterson dismissed this explanation, citing ongoing construction works that contradicts the minister's statement. Let's review what transpired during the year on the much-touted electoral fraud trial case. The highly awaited trial over court on Monday, July 29. Day 1 saw the prosecution and the defense clashing over Minister of Local Government and Regional Development Sonia Parag's testimony, since the defense was not provided with complete disclosure.
The long-awaited electoral fraud trial involving 9 persons began in the Georgetown Magistrates Court before Senior Magistrate Leron Daly. In his opening statement, Lead Prosecutor King's Counsel Darshan Ramdani outlined the prosecution's main points of evidence and strategy at the start of the trial. Soon after, defense attorney U.C. Anderson made multiple applications requesting original statements of polls and protection for the 9 defendants. Anderson also sought a site visit to the former Guyana Elections Commission GCOM Command Center, arguing these measures were essential for a fair trial. Magistrate Daly then ruled that any decision regarding an on-site visit would depend on the evidence provided throughout the trial, and that the original SOPs would only be presented when deemed suitable. It was then time for the first witness, Minister of Local Government and Regional Development, Sonia Parag, to enter the witness box. Parag was a candidate for the People's Progressive Party Civic (PPPC) in the 2020 elections. In her testimony, Parag provided evidence of what she observed on March 2, 2020. Throughout her testimony, the defense raised a number of concerns regarding what should and should not be accepted as evidence. Attorney-at-law Ronald Daniels, in an interview outside the courtroom, said in the latter portion of Parag's testimony, she was given evidence that was not disclosed to the defense.
So we took the objection that the evidence that she was given, we did not have the benefit of that to obtain instructions from our client. Our learned senior on the prosecution side took the view that the witness should be permitted to.
The trial faced numerous delays over the last 3 years, but was clear to begin following a ruling by the acting Chief Justice Roxanne George. Justice George ruled that the constitutional rights of former Chief Election Officer Keith Lowenfield and his deputy Roxanne Myers to a fair trial would not be violated by the Representation of the People Act, which prohibits disclosure of the Guyana Elections Commission GCOM's meeting. Following an investigation into the March 2020 general and regional elections and subsequent events, criminal charges were brought against former GCOM officials and others for their alleged involvement in attempting to allegedly rig the elections. They collectively face over 20 electoral fraud-related charges in court. Those on trial are former District 4 Returning Officer Clement Mingo, former Deputy Chief Elections Officer Roxanne Myers, former Chief Elections Officer Keith Lowenfield, Fowler Lawrence, Carol Smith Joseph. Other GCOM staff facing charges include Sheffrin February.
Meanwhile, on the same day, the prosecution accused the defense of employing delayed tactics to obstruct the trial, insisting that they will continue to raise objections as needed. Here again is Tiana Cole.
And if there are legal issues, we will object every time, like what transpired this morning. The prosecutors, they are ministers of justice and they must be fair. If they are going to bring things that are unfair to our clients, we have a duty, we are duty bound in the interest of the justice to raise every issue.
That's attorney-at-law Darren Wade, who made it pellucid that the defense will not sit back and allow unlawful evidence that could harm the client's case be entered into evidence. Attorney-at-law Ronald Daniels, who expressed similar sentiments as his colleague Wade, stated that they have a duty to uphold law as ministers of justice and that they will vigorously and fearlessly defend their clients. He emphasized that they are obligated to raise an objection if the situation calls for it.
The defense has no interest or no motivation to protract these proceedings.
On Monday, the much-anticipated trial over the delays. Very early into the trial, King's Counsel Darshan Ramdani, the lead prosecutor, accused the defense of using delayed tactics to stall the proceedings. Following an investigation into the March 2020 general and regional elections and subsequent events, criminal charges were brought against former GCOM officials and others for their alleged involvement in attempting to allegedly rig the elections. They collectively face over 20 electoral fraud-related charges in court. The trial continues on Tuesday, with Minister of Local Government Sonia Parag continuing her testimony.
On December 30, Chief Magistrate Faith McGusty is expected to rule on whether the highly anticipated election fraud trial will proceed summarily or indictable.
The highly anticipated trial over alleged electoral irregularities in the 2020 general elections was once again called before in the Georgetown Magistrates Court. The case was transferred to Chief Magistrate McGusty in November after the previous magistrate Leron Daly fell ill. During the hearing, both the prosecution and defense presented submissions on whether the case should be heard summarily or indictably. The prosecution argued for the case to be tried summarily, allowing the magistrate to deliver a final ruling. In contrast, the defense pushed for the matter to be tried indictably, which would require a preliminary inquiry in the magistrate's court before it proceeds to the High Court. Lead prosecutor Darshan Ramdani, King's counsel, stated outside the courtroom that the prosecution is prepared to proceed regardless of the magistrate's decision.
The question is whether this magistrate has to restart the matter entirely and whether this magistrate has to redetermine whether the matter should be tried summarily or indictably.
However, defense counsel Nigel Hughes, representing some of the defendants, opposed to the case and arguments from both sides, announced that the ruling would be delivered on December 30, 2024. Defense attorney Nigel Hughes had argued that the trial must restart from the point when the 9 accused first appeared in court. This would invalidate earlier decisions by Magistrate Daly and 2 other magistrates who had ruled that the 31 charges would be heard summarily under the Administration of Justice Act. Hughes contended that any prior rulings are not binding on McGusty's court due to the change in magistrate. However, Prosecutor Ramdani suggested that the trial could resume from the testimonies of 2 witnesses who had earlier provided evidence during earlier hearings. The charges stem from an investigation into the March 2020 general and regional elections and subsequent events. Multiple criminal charges were filed against former GCOM officials and others for their alleged involvement in attempting to rig the elections.
We will now turn our attention to the Gas to Energy GTE project, switching our attention to the progress and challenges encountered on the much-touted government and the private sector will see the construction of a natural gas pipeline and proceeding plan convert Guyana's natural gas into electricity.
Vice President Barjagdeo, in addressing the delay in the highly promoted gas to energy project being executed by the government, said that the initial deadline has been affected.
The timeline had not been affected. Now the timeline has been affected, but it's not because of anything except the handing over of the site.
Saying that the delivery date will now be a few months before the holding of general and regional elections.
We expect the gas energy project to be in here latest mid-2025. Everything should be up and running.
On the other hand, the Vice President noted that despite the delays, work is still forging ahead despite the non-approval of the 130.
Loan is approved.
Should the loan not be approved, the former president said there are alternatives but did not disclose what those are.
Meanwhile, former Public Works Minister David Paterson has expressed hopelessness regarding the second phase of the gas to energy project, given the fact that the first phase remains incomplete. Antonio Day reports.
It does not look, which is the one that's being done now. It's unlikely to be completed for 2025. We've already seen that.
That was former Public Works Minister David Paterson Friday last while addressing phase 1 of the approximately $2 billion Wales Gas to Energy project during the Alliance for Change's weekly press conference. Paterson pinpointed that among the delays, which include pile driving activities, which recently commenced, also sees contractors awaiting the arrival of a key equipment. According to the Alliance for Change chairman, authorities are already dealing with the handing over of the contractor Linsika CH4 by ExxonMobil Guyana Limited, EMGL.
We can expect a lengthy delay. I heard Jagdeo make a threat about $11 million a month liquidated damages. I can safely predict that will not happen. They're accustomed to dealing with Chinese Chinese firms, whereby when these delays occur, they may meet in a convenient venue or even at the Vice President's home, as we seen in the Vice News.
Meeting the current energy demands has proven to pose serious challenges for the Guyana Power and Light. Guyana's power grid over the past 12 months received several boosts to address the ongoing electricity woes experienced by the more than 200,000 Guyana Power and Light customers.
As Guyanese continue to feel the brunt of the Guyana Power and Light sporadic power outages daily, President Irfan Ali, on the sidelines of an event on Wednesday, expressed his disappointment at the frequent power outages and sought to highlight GPL's struggles in maintaining stable electricity.
The problem is multifaceted. First issue is that we're dealing with a very aged infrastructure. Some of these generators are 30 years old.
The government recently invested $27.5 million to procure 17 generator sets that was expected to provide some 28.9 megawatts of electricity. This is while Guyanese await completion of the 300 megawatt gas-to-energy project. The president, though, did not take all the blame for the frequent blackouts currently plaguing Guyana.
We're dealing with a situation where for 5 years, between 2015 and 2020, there was actually no maintenance. So you have the maintenance issue that you have to catch up on. You have aged infrastructure. And then we're dealing with the exponential growth.
However, former Minister of Public Infrastructure David Patterson, who had direct responsibility for the Guyana Power and Light, said that the People's Progressive Party Civic is trying to hide its mismanagement of the power company. Patterson, while highlighting the steps APNU-AFC did to reduce power outages, chided the president for saying that the PPP inherited a poorly maintained system.
We did new generation sets, 63 megawatts. We put in a new generation set in Region 6, their stronghold. A new generation set in Anna Regina, if you can remember Anna Regina, 3 sets. They have their new generation sets in Bartica. We put in 46 megawatts. That's what kept us in Garden of Eden. That is what they hung on to for the last 4 years.
Government then announced the arrival of a power ship that promised to bring much relief to citizens. President Ali over the weekend announced that the government, in collaboration with the Guyana Power and Light Incorporated, GPL, has finalized an accord with a Qatari-based energy entity to supply 36 megawatts of electricity to the national grid.
I wish to announce that today, government through the Guyana Power and Light Incorporated conducted a time charter agreement with UCC Holding for a power ship to be deployed to Guyana within 3 weeks.
President Ali, in responding to grievances regarding frequent power outages nationwide, expressed optimism that the introduction of a power supply ship would significantly mitigate the issue.
This arrangement will bring an additional 36 megawatts of power to the national grid to offset generation shortfalls.
Although the costs regarding procurement and maintenance of the power ship were not disclosed, Ali guaranteed that the vessel is being acquired at a reasonable cost.
The vessel will be chartered for a period of 24 months from the date of commencement of the agreement. This power arrangement is being obtained at a very competitive cost. It will cover the charter costs of the vessel, including its generating engines, as well as operations and maintenance costs.
Despite that injection, though, GPL's customers still grappled with frequent power outages, and before long, government announced the acquisition of a second power ship, which will add some 60 megawatts of power to the national grid. In a move aimed at addressing the nation's electricity woes, the Guyana Power and Light GPL signed a contract on Wednesday with car power ship Global DMCC and UCC Energy International LLC for the rental of a second power ship. This 75 megawatts power ship is expected to bolster the country's energy supply under a 2-year agreement. In a statement, GPL highlighted that the power ship will be stationed at the Demerara River, with the first 60 megawatts scheduled to be integrated into the national grid within the next 6 weeks. An additional 15 megawatts will be brought online once upgrades to the transmission line are completed. Under the terms of the contract, GPL will pay a monthly rental fee of US $8.52 per kilowatt hour, along with an operational and maintenance charge of US 0.98 cents per kilowatt hour based on power generated.
As part of the agreement, GPL will supply the necessary heavy fuel oil, HFO, to fuel the generators, ensuring continuous operation. Meanwhile, executive member of the Alliance for Change AFC, David Patterson, has since criticized the decision to extend the Turkish car power ship's contract for another 2 years. He argued that this move was nonsensical as the money allocated for the rental of the power ship could have been used to generate a larger amount of power using HFO at the same cost.
We could have purchased 180 megawatts of Guyanese own HFO power for that exact same amount of money. Makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
You're watching a special edition of Nightly News' Year in Review. Let's turn our attention to news coming out from the Indigenous community. We will review what transpired during this year's hosting of the annual National Tushaus Council Conference, where more than 300 leaders gathered to deliberate.
The Amerindian People's Association, known as the APA, during a recent interview with Nightly News, expressed disappointment with the conduct of the 2024 National Tushaus Council Conference, NTCC. APA's project manager, Graham Atkinson, pointed out to this newscast several blatant flaws.
We found on day one that there were clearly no rules regarding elections and so on. You found that a current RU from region number 9, who is closely aligned with the political party, the governing party, was the returning officer.
Atkinson noted that at the opening of the NTCC, Tushaus from various district councils elected a 20-member executive committee, but several procedures were not followed.
They pulled some rules out of the air to talk about rotation of Tushaus from the North Backrimers to sit on the NTC. We've never heard of that before.
The NTC elections resulted in the re-election of Derek John as chairman, followed by Sonia Lachman, Tushau of Bethany, as vice chair. Atkinson said that the APA will willingly work with the state to devise proper mandates and procedures regarding the conduct of the NTCC.
Well, people are making up rules for the NTC, and this is the government really doing that. The APA is trying to help the NTC to come up with mandates and procedures governing how the meeting is conducted.
Meanwhile, the environment at the National Tushaus Council Conference was dubbed unwelcoming as Indigenous leaders who vented their concerns were seen as a threat to the state. Antonia Day has reports.
On Monday, Head of State Irfan Ali's speech at Day 1 of the National Tushaus Council Conference, NTCC, came across as a political campaign, to which Tushau of Kako, Romario Hastings, deemed inappropriate. He opined that the conference is a venue for Tushaus and Indigenous leaders to verbalize issues plaguing their districts, with the hope that they are addressed. Hastings had also called for mutual respect and constructive dialogue between the state and community leaders. He was heavily criticized by Vice President Bar Jagdio, who said that any Tushau who believes that the Low Carbon Development Strategy Program, LCDS, is not serving the people and their community is free to opt out. Jagdio went further to accuse the Amerindian People's Association, known as the APA, of preventing Indigenous leaders from accessing funds from the sales of Guyana's carbon credits. Jagdio's stance was flagged by APA's President Benson Thomas during a sit-down with Nightly News on Thursday.
The environment was not conducive to that kind of a friendly atmosphere that entertains or that encourages cordial dialogue among the Indigenous people. The response to Romario, I feel, it's great disrespect to his input, his opinion as to what he believes.
Thomas said that the behavior demonstrated by the Vice President towards Tushau Hastings create a bad impression for young Tushaus gathered at the NTC.
Great disrespect to the individual and to the young people in particular who are emerging leaders.
Also in October, President Irfan Ali announced a $200,000 one-off cash grant per household to cushion the effects of high cost of living. However, the Guyanese leader came in for harsh criticism by leader of the opposition.
A one-off cash grant of $200,000 to every household in Guyana. This will see an injection of $60 billion of disposable income into the Guyanese households countrywide.
Head of State Irfan Ali, while addressing the 86th sitting of the National Assembly on Thursday at the Arthur Chung Conference Center. President Ali said that the $200,000 will be disbursed instantaneously. Following the president's announcement, Leader of the Opposition, Aubrey Norton, accompanied by a throng of party supporters, rubbished the $200,000 cash grant.
Let us put it at 240, just to round it up. Let's assume it's 240. You know that what it equates to? That's what, 20,000 a month? It makes no sense. What is $20,000 a month going to do for the average man? And the PPP doesn't want to empower people. They want to drop it in bits so that they could keep people dependent. 200,000 Guyana dollars can do nothing at this stage to help the people of Guyana.
Mr. Norton added that the 2024 national budget failed to bring any real improvements to the lives of ordinary citizens, replicating the results from the $900 billion 2023 fiscal plan. He noted that this year's fiscal plan took care of friends and favorites of the ruling People's Progressive Party Civic, while neglecting the middle and lower classes in society.
With the announced cash grant distribution causing a buzz, leader of the Alliance for Change, Nigel Hughes, suggested government formulate a statutory framework to manage its distribution. Antonia Day has the details.
Alliance for Change AFC leader Nigel Hughes, during a media briefing last Friday, called on the state to implement a quote-unquote statutory framework following the announcement of the $200,000 cash grant per household.
That you've had an announcement by the President in the National Assembly, but there is no framework for which this is going to be carried out.
Hughes, in cross-examining the government's method for distributing the one-off cash grant, believes that this could potentially disenfranchise many Guyanese.
What is the definition of a household? The President has said it's going to be given to the household. Does a household mean a single family living in a single dwelling? Does it mean, does a household mean several families, each living in the same location? Each family will get a handout? There's no statutory definition for this.
The attorney at law explained that many factors must be considered before carrying out such an exercise.
Duty. We believe this ought to be regulated. It ought to have a very clear framework. So the persons who are affected by it, who believe that they might have been unfairly treated.
Hughes reasoned too that a regulatory framework would aid in a transparent distribution of the cash grant.
If they think somebody has got twice, there must be some sort of framework for those concerns to be addressed.
Meanwhile, the cash grant initiative announced was dubbed an ill-thought-out plan since it caused a significant surge in the transfer, registration of utility meters, and a rush to prepare tenancy agreements. Hence, the government retreated to the drawing board. Here is more.
There seems to be an acceptance by the People's Progressive Party civic government that the $200,000 one-off cash grant per household, initially announced by President Irfan Ali, was ill thought out. That can only be the conclusion given this statement by General Secretary of the People's Progressive Party civic and Guyana's Vice President Barra Jagdeo during his Thursday afternoon press conference.
We have people who close to us. They said, people are coming to us, they heard about it. Tenancy agreements. By Friday afternoon, the tenancy agreements, everyone wanted to sign up a fake tenancy agreement. Because then you present your tenancy agreement. After we would have used, say, electricity bill, etc., the primary household, fake tenancy agreement. We would have ended up with 500, maybe 600,000 households.
President Irfan Ali on Wednesday announced that each Guyanese 18 years and older as of January 1, 2024 would now receive $100,000 in cash grants. According to Mr. Jagdeo, the government had to go back to the drawing board, hence this new decision of a one-off $100,000 grant.
Then we saw people starting going to GPL. They want new meters and all kinds of things. So for their own room, all kinds. Before Friday, we realized that you couldn't count on the goodwill of people anymore.
In fact, According to Mr. Jagdeo, the decision to go back to the drawing board was made 2 days after the announcement by President Afrin Ali, because government only then realized that the distribution exercise would have been a never-ending controversy.
I said to them after the interview that we're reconsidering this, but do not say anything as yet. And I told them specific. That's Friday afternoon. And the person who interviewed me can confirm this, because I said, please don't say anything. This was Friday afternoon.
It was former Finance Minister Winston Jordan who had publicly recommended that to eliminate the controversy that erupted over what constitutes a household, government should distribute the $100,000 to each adult Guyanese. Mr. Jagdeo now claims that the PPP did not bow to the recommendations by the former finance minister.
I suspect somebody told him that their government is reconsidering it to change it now. He claims credit for it. APNU is saying, it's our great idea. They are the idea now, you know. I don't give a damn about APNU and their idea.
In fact, the government now plans to distribute the $100,000 per adult citizen, mostly by checks. According to the Vice President, it will ensure better transparency and record keeping.
You're watching a special edition of Nightly News' Year in Review. Now on the Brutus Probe. Following allegations of financial impropriety leveled against Deputy Commissioner of Police Acting, Calvin Brutus, he was sent on administrative leave to facilitate an investigation. Find out more from Tiana Cole.
Following shocking allegations that Deputy Commissioner of Police Acting, Calvin Brutus, allegedly deposited tens of millions of dollars into the Guyana's Police Credit Union account, and which was later returned to him, Brutus was on Thursday sent on administrative leave to facilitate an investigation into financial impropriety. Nightly News is in receipt of credit union documents, which shows that $16.5 million was allegedly deposited into the Corps Credit Union account on December 15, 2023. A reliable source commenting on the matter said, quote-unquote, "It's how money is easily laundered. You have to comply or else you face the wrath of the higher-ups." The source of the funds was stated as, quote-unquote, "wedding gifts prior, during, and after reception." Reports indicate that a transaction has been brought to the attention of the Financial Intelligence Unit. However, the Guyana Police Force, in a statement after Nightly News broke the story on Thursday, said consequent to allegations of financial impropriety leveled against Deputy Commissioner Acting Calvin Brutus on social media and established media houses, Brutus has since requested permission to proceed on annual vacation leave with immediate effect.
The Special Organized Crime Unit, SOCU, has been ordered by the government to conduct a thorough investigation into allegations of corruption against Acting Deputy Police Commissioner Calvin Brutus. Here is Tiana Cole with the details.
There are allegations of corruption against Brutus. He's on leave, and SOCU has been ordered to do the investigation by the government.
That was Vice President Barrett Jagdeo, who was at the time speaking during a press conference at his party's Freedom House headquarters on Thursday. The Vice President stated unequivocally that both internal and external influence will be excluded from inquiries into claims of corruption against Assistant Police Commissioner Calvin Brutus and the Guyana Police Force.
I can say to you that at SOCU, there'll be no pressure by anyone in the police force, because the President himself is looking into this matter and all these matters. There'll be no pressure by anyone internally to alter the course of this investigation or any other investigation of malpractices anywhere in the country or in the police force.
There have also been calls, especially from the political opposition, for there to be an external investigation into the operation of the force and senior officers.
We don't want to vilify policemen too, because somehow people believe it's an open season on policemen. A lot of them do a great job, and they're hard-working people serving this country. And we must not for the purpose of politics or for ratings or to get a good newspaper article, vilify people in the police force.
Mr. Brutus then alleged that senior government officials had interfered in a high-level investigation as court action was filed against top officials. Travis Chase filed that story.
Alleging that Vice President Barra Jagdeo continues to interfere with an investigation being conducted by the Special Organized Crime Unit and the breach of his natural justice, Assistant Police Commissioner Calvin Brutus yesterday moved to the High Court against the Attorney General, Minister of Home Affairs, Police Service Commission, Acting Police Commissioner, and the Special Organized Crime Unit, SUCU. In court documents seen by Nightly News, Mr. Brutus told the High Court that he is being victimized in the ongoing investigation and being denied services, including a restriction on his bank accounts. Brutus also claimed that Cabinet had a role to play in him being sent on leave and recounted an appearance in court where he was threatened with a wanted bulletin if he did not show up at the Special Organized Crime Unit. The senior cop wants the court to find that the police force's Special Organized Crime Unit exceeded its lawful power and authority by the unlawful and premature restraining of his and his family's bank accounts, the manipulation of evidence, intimidation and harassment of witnesses, and unlawful leaking of information to the media and social media. The High Court is also being asked to prevent the government from continuing to obstruct and interfere with his lawful access to services with state agencies because it is unconstitutional and irrational, based on irrelevant and extraneous considerations, contrary to the rules of natural justice, unreasonable, unlawful, null, void, and no effect.
We will tell you that to avoid questions from the press, the majority of Guyana's press corps was barred from the swearing-in ceremony of the Commissioner of Police and his deputies. Travis Chase reports.
Journalists from multiple news organizations have been deliberately barred from the official swearing-in ceremony of the Commissioner of Police and the Deputy Commissioners of Police on Thursday morning. Instead, journalists were forced to follow the live stream of the swearing-in ceremony. Only a few hand-picked journalists witnessed the swearing-in ceremony. The question as to why the press was not invited to such an important event was met with silence from the Corporate Communications Unit of the Guyana Police Force. In fact, it can be observed that the relationship among the President, the hierarchy of the Guyana Police Force, and the press is now more confrontational and contemptuous than it has been in decades. It is therefore reasonable to assume that the Guyana Police Force and the government at large deliberately shut out members of the press to avoid questions about the constitutionality of appointing Clifton Hicken, who has passed the age of retirement as police commissioner. Nightly News understands that Mr. Hicken's tenure as acting commissioner of police should have legally ended on August 1, 2023. Mr. Clifton Hicken was appointed to act as commissioner of police in March of 2022 when he was 53 years old. He reached retirement age of 55 in July of 2024. To shut out the press from such an important ceremony, President Irfaan Ali felt more comfortable and unchallenged to say that he has followed the Constitution when he appointed Mr. Hicken as Commissioner of Police.
So as I congratulate you, I have also fulfilled my constitutional requirement for the appointment of the Commissioner of Police, and every aspect of the appointment has been meticulously followed as prescribed by the Constitution. Consultation, everything.
Opposition leader Aubrey Norton had already rejected the president's nod of Mr. Hicken being appointed. Norton had listed a series of reasons why Hicken should not be considered for the position. Commissioner Hicken will be supported by 5 deputy commissioners who were all sworn in Thursday morning. They are Mr. Errol Watts, Mr. Simon McBean, Mr. Fasil Karingbaksh, Mr. Ravindranath Budram, and Mr. Wendell Blanham.
In September, centenarian Blanche Emily Duke reflected on a remarkable life living in Betterville acting to her decades-long career as a dedicated teacher. She expressed both gratitude for her experiences and concern for the challenges facing today's education system. More in this report.
Centenarian Miss Blanche Duke, a resident of the historic village of Bedford on the east coast of Demerara, continues to defy the odds by writing and publishing books well into her centenary year. Teacher B, as she is fondly known, a former educator, began her teaching career at the tender age of 15 in 1939 at the Bedford Government School, and later served as an acting principal of the Cyril Potter College of Education from 1959 to 1978. She always had a passion for the English language and writing, embarking on her literary journey in 1986. She recently shared some fond memories of her first with Nightly News.
I think the first book I wrote was a booklet. Diocese came to Guyana.
This remarkable woman holds a diploma in child development, an associate's degree in education from London University, and a master's degree in education and psychology. Over her 40-year career, she has dedicated herself to education. Teacher B also served as the editor of the St. Mary the Virgin Anglican Church's magazine from 1980 to 1996. During this time, visitors to Guyana came to the church, and the then priest, Bishop George, tasked her with providing them with materials about their destinations, requiring her to research and compile informative content. Compiling the book proved to be quite a challenge for Teacher B, as it involved sifting through old magazines dating back to the 1800s to gather relevant content.
And that's how I wrote that first book. It took me a long time because you had to go through every parish.
Over the years, this dedicated author also produced several religious books, including A History of the Anglican Church in Guyana, published in May 2000, and a Diocesan Potpourri, and the Historical Review of St. Mary the Virgin Anglican Church for the church's 150th anniversary in 2009. Her most recent book, History of Bedford to Triumph, will soon be available on Amazon. Born in 1924, Teacher B celebrated her 100th birthday on September 29, 2024, beginning with a church service followed by a reception at the St. Mary the Virgin Anglican Church in Bedford.
As we featured cancer survivors in observance of Cancer Awareness Month, breast cancer survivor Renata Williams shared her journey after dealing with mastectomy, side effects, and therapy. More in this Tiana Cole's report.
41-year-old Renata Williams, who was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer in June 2022, said if it wasn't for her daughter who was being playful by touching her breast, she would not have discovered a lump, since there were no other signs and symptoms of cancer.
Initially, my daughter she's big, but she has always been playful. We've always had a relationship like mother and daughter, but yet friends. And she has a habit from small. When she stopped nursing, she started feeling the breast. That was her comfort. And she would still come and touch. And she touched, and upon her touching, I decided, you'd shun her off, and I touched also, and I felt a little lump.
Upon discovering the lump, Williams visited the Diamond Diagnostic Center, and she was told by doctors to do a breast ultrasound, where the results revealed the lump was benign. She then did a biopsy, and the results came back positive for cancer. Following a single mastectomy, she began 12 rounds of chemotherapy and 30 sessions of radiation therapy. The adverse effects of these therapies included severe pain, memory loss, weight loss, and complete hair loss. The mother of two had to deal with additional challenges, such as changing her diet, becoming dependent on others, and contracting multiple infections.
So there was a period of time when I couldn't even swallow my own saliva. That was really hard because you can't eat, you can't drink. My tears, or you might say eye water, tears in my eyes, it changed. It was more like crystal. I used to literally feel like something is boring me in my eyes all the time.
She emphasized that receiving the cancer diagnosis was detrimental on her life because it has left her jobless and she had to adjust to dependency on others for daily functions that she previously performed on her own.
It's hard to complete a simple daily routine. The fact that I suffer something they call chemo fog or chemo brain, whereby you would put on something, you just turn around and you forget where you put it. Sometimes you start something and you just move off to do something else and then you can't remember what it is exactly you were doing.
Despite these challenges, the love and support she received from family, friends, and support groups helped her to remain positive throughout her journey.
Realistically, going through this, you have the support of your relatives and friends and whoever. But unless it is somebody that actually went through it, it doesn't matter how much they feel for you or how much you try to explain to them, they can't understand. Easier, in a sense, to take a role model there from persons that would have went through it. So it's very important to connect with others.
Her advice to anyone who has been diagnosed with cancer is to stay strong and not let negative comments dampen their spirits. She acknowledged that cancer isn't the end of the world, but rather the beginning of a new chapter in life.
Surround yourself with positive people. Find a support group that you're able to connect with people that has gone through it and can, give you that emotional support. And don't give up. And most importantly, pray and trust God.
Williams' message to the public is for persons to educate oneself on proper self-care by improving your diet, learning how to properly examine your body, especially for breast cancer, regular doctor appointments, and sharing your information. Being a triple negative cancer patient means that Williams' disease could return. As such, even though it is in remission, she said she still has some test results pending to know her current status. These results are expected next month and will determine if she's completely cancer-free.
And that has brought us to the end of our special edition of Nightly News' Year in Review. On behalf of all of us at 8GP TV Channel 67, Cable 16, I am Carice Gonzalez, wishing you a prosperous new year.